Now, do you guys like Raspberry Pis? Do you like supercomputers? Would you want to see a supercomputer be made out of a Raspberry Pi? Stick around, we're gonna do so in this very video. What's up guys, I'm Riston from RossMerTech.com, and in this video, we're gonna create a supercomputer out of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s. Now we're gonna have a Raspberry Pi 4 gig, 1 Raspberry Pi 2 gig, and 2 Raspberry Pi 1 gigs. So a total of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s. All right, so this is only part 1 of this video series. They're gonna be a total of 4 parts. In this video, we're gonna go over all the parts. We're gonna build the Raspberry Pi cluster, connect all the cables, and then in the other parts, we're gonna set up the cluster. So without further ado, let's get started with this build. All right, so these are all the parts that are gonna go in our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster supercomputer video series here. I got 4 Raspberry Pi 4s. We have 1 Raspberry Pi 4 gig, 1 Raspberry Pi 4 2 gig, and 2 Raspberry Pi 4 1 gigs. So that's a total of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s, right? We got the power supply. Now I went to Tinkersphere. I got 3 of them from Tinkersphere. These are the Raspberry Pi 4 power supplies. And I was able to get my hands on one of the official Raspberry Pi power supplies that they sell. I got this from Micro Center. So this one is an official Raspberry Pi 4 power supply. And these I got from Tinkersphere. I'll leave a link to all this in the description. Now right here, this is the Raspberry Pi cluster case. We're able to build up 4 Raspberry Pis using this case here. It's gonna look cool. We're gonna build that in a second. I got 4 micro SD cards there. I opened one of the Raspberry Pi 4s. This here is the 4 gigabyte version. This is the networking switch we're gonna use to connect the Raspberry Pi 4s. This is a Linksys 8-port gigabit switch. This was like $35, I believe. I got this at Best Buy. I'm gonna leave a link to this in the description. This is what's gonna allow us to connect all the Raspberry Pi 4s. And finally, I got the cables here. These are the networking cables. These are Cat5e, 3-foot cables. They're different colors, so I thought the different colors would make this build look a lot better. So that's pretty much it for the parts. Now let's start the build. All right, first we're gonna put together the cluster case. So this is the cluster case right here. I got this one from Tinkersphere, and with this case we're allowed to stack up 4 Raspberry Pis. It was $20, so not too expensive. I'll leave a link to this, if I can't find this, a similar case in the description. Alright guys, we finally finished building the case. It took a while, and it looks pretty cool. I gotta admit, it does look cool. We got our 4 Raspberry Pi 4s here. We have a Raspberry Pi 4. We have a 4 gigabyte, we have a 2 gigabyte, and 2 1 gigabyte. So that makes a total of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s that we're gonna cluster. So these are the Raspberry Pi 4s. All we have to do now is set up the switch and connect all the cables. Alright guys, so we finished building the cluster. As you can see here, that's a 8-port switch. We have 4 Ethernet cables connected to our Raspberry Pi 4s. We have a total of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s. One's a 4 gig, one is a 2 gig, and we have 2 1 gigs. So a total of 4 Raspberry Pi 4s. and we have the power connected, and all you have to do is power it up basically. So this is just part one. In the next part, we're actually going to set up the software. We're going to set up the cluster. We're going to download Raspberry and all that stuff. This is going to be a total of 4 parts, by the way. So the next part, we're going to set up the cluster. That's pretty much it for this part. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. So this was video 1. Now stay tuned for video part 2 of this build, where we set up the cluster. If you guys like this video, please give me a like. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I'm Rustin from RaspberryTech.com, and thank you guys for watching. What's up, guys? I'm Rustin from RaspberryTech.com. How you guys doing? I'm doing well. Hopefully you guys are doing well today too. Now welcome to part 2 of our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster computer series. Now in this video, we're only going to work with one of the Pis. In part 3, we're going to finish the cluster. We're going to set up the other Pis. In part 4, we're going to test out our supercomputer to see how it performs. So in this video, we're going to install Raspbian. We're going to install a bunch of stuff. We're going to set up our Raspberry Pi. We're going to install all the things we need to install. Part 3, again, we're going to set up the rest of the Raspberry Pis, and part 4 will be the cluster test. All right, guys, so this is the website that I created. This is called Dev Unicorn. I created this website to have a place for all my tutorials, videos that I create regarding Raspberry Pis, programming. All of that stuff is going to go here. It's going to live here. It's going to live on YouTube. So originally I used to put my stuff on Raspberry Tech, but I have a new site. It's called Dev Unicorns. All my stuff is going to go on this site now. I created a new page. This is called Raspberry Pi 4 Cluster Supercomputer. I'll leave a link to this page. This is the main page we're going to be using for this whole series. We're going to be copying a lot of the stuff from this page. Now, I added everything to this page. Now, these are the parts with all the links here. I have to fix the links, by the way. These links are not active, but by the time you guys watch the video, they should be working. So there's going to be links to all the parts. These are the software that we're going to need to install, like Raspbian, Win32 Disk Imager, all that stuff. And these are the full instructions. And all the code we're going to be able to copy and paste onto our terminal. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do is navigate to this page here, Raspbian. Raspbian is the OS for Raspberry Pi. We're going to download the light version here. Now it's Raspbian Buster. This is the newest version of Raspbian. Now, if you guys watch this video in the future, it might be a different name. Don't worry about it. Just download the light version. Make sure it's the light version. And I'm sorry, this is the light version right here. And we want to download the zip. So download the zip. It should take about a minute or so to download. All right, once it's finished downloading, you're going to extract it to someplace. I'm going to extract mine to the desktop. Press OK. It's extracting the file to the desktop. It basically was zipped, so you need to extract it. So you guys have to do the same thing, extract it to wherever you want to extract it to, but remember where you extracted it to. So that's done. Now we're going to move on to the next tab. This is Win32 Disk Imager. This program is going to allow us to burn the Raspberry Pi image onto a micro SD card. So you're going to need a micro SD card reader, and it has to be connected to your PC for this to work. So we're going to download it. Click on download. I have mine downloaded already. So once you're finished downloading Win32 Disk Imager, we're going to move on to PuTTY. Now, PuTTY is a program that allows us to remotely access our Raspberry Pis. It's a pretty cool one. I've been using it for years. So download PuTTY, find out which one you want here, download it. Once you finish downloading it, we're going to move on to the next part. We finished downloading all that stuff. We're going to open up Win32 Disk Imager. We just finished downloading it and installing it, so open it up. It should look something like this. Now, you're going to want to make sure that your micro SD card is connected to your micro SD card reader. So, I just connected mine. And hit OK here. I'm going to click this. I'm going to close this. Now, we want to click on this folder icon here, and navigate to wherever you downloaded your image. So, I'm going to go to desktop. That's where I extracted mine. And I'm going to look for the image. And it should be here. Yep. This is the image, Raspbian Buster Lite. Again, if you're doing this in the future, it might be called something different. Buster is the newest version of Raspbian. As of today, tomorrow might be something else. So I'm going to click on it, click open. Then click on write. Click on yes. Now it's going to start burning the image onto the SD card. So let that do its thing. Once it's finished, we're gonna come right back. All right, so it's finished burning it onto our micro SD card. We're gonna click on OK. We can close this now. Now we're going to open up our file explorer here, and we're gonna navigate to our drive letter, the one that says boot. It's the one we just burned. Mine's is drive G, yours could be whatever. So just click on the one that says boot. In this directory here, this is the boot directory for Raspbian. We're gonna create a new file. So we're gonna right click this here, the screen, and we're gonna click on new, scroll down where it says text document, click on that. Now we're gonna delete everything in here. Don't leave anything, including the .text. We don't want this to have any extension. So we're gonna type in SSH and that's it. And we're gonna type in yes. So as type, yours should be file. It shouldn't be text. So all we did was type in SSH and that's it. So this is a little trick that will allow us to enable SSH. So by default, Raspbian stopped enabling SSH. We're gonna need SSH enabled if we wanna remotely access our Raspberry Pi, which we're gonna do with PuTTY. So this is a neat trick that I learned and it helps us enable SSH. So again, by default, SSH is not enabled for security reasons. So we're gonna close this. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take out our micro SD card connected to our Raspberry Pi, make sure our Raspberry Pi is connected to our network, the same network we're using right now on our desktop, right? And we have to have an internet connection and power on the Raspberry Pi, and we could move on to the next step. All right, guys, so now I connected my Raspberry Pi. I have the micro SD card connected to the Raspberry Pi. I have the Raspberry Pi connected to our network using an Ethernet cable. I powered on the Raspberry Pi. Now we can move on to the next step. And the next step is to find out the IP address of our Raspberry Pi. So we can do that by opening up terminal. So if you're using Windows, type in CMD here in search, then hit enter. This terminal window should pop up here. And we're gonna type in ping, P-I-N-G, hit space. Then we're gonna type in RASPBERRY, Pi. By default, the Raspberry Pi network name should be Raspberry Pi. So if we ping Raspberry Pi, it's gonna get, if it's on our network, it will give us back the IP address. So we're gonna hit enter, and it's working because we're getting an IP address back here. So the IP address for my Raspberry Pi is 192.168.1.17. Yours is gonna be different. Make sure you write it down. So I'm writing mine down right now, 192.168.1.17. Yours is gonna be different, so make sure you write yours down. All right, so now that we got that, we're going to close this. We're gonna open up PuTTY. Click on yes. PuTTY is the, I'm sorry, it's not PuTTY. This is PuTTY. Okay, so PuTTY is basically a lot. So what PuTTY does is allows us to remotely access our Raspberry Pi. So it's pretty neat. So right here, we're gonna type in our IP address of our Raspberry Pi. Mine says 192.168.1.17. Yours will be different, so type in yours. Hit open, click on yes. As you can see, now we're connected to our Raspberry Pi. All we need to do is type in the username and password. If we didn't add that file originally to the boot directory, this wouldn't work because by default, SSH is not enabled because of security reasons. We don't want hackers to automatically log into our Raspberry Pis by default, right? So login as is going to be Pi. Type in Pi, P-I, hit enter. Then the password is going to be Raspberry, so RASPBERRY. That's the username and password by default. So now we successfully remotely access our Raspberry Pi. So this is why we downloaded the light version, by the way. We don't need the graphical user interface. We only need this right here, the terminal, the core of the operating system. Now we're gonna type in rasp-config. Sorry, let's just copy it from here. Sudo, I forgot to type in sudo. So I'm copying it from here. We're using the page on the left here. This is the page I created to help you guys with all the steps, and all you have to do is really copy and paste. So when I'm typing something in, you can just copy and paste it from here. So sudo space rasp-config. This opens up like the settings for the Raspberry Pi. So we're gonna hit enter. Now the settings page opens up for our Raspberry Pi. It's called the configuration tools. All right, first thing we want to do is scroll down to advanced options. Then we want to go to the first one here where it says expand file system, hit enter. Now it basically expanded the file system. So what it's doing is, let's say you have a 8GB micro SD card. When it first installed the Raspberry on that micro SD card, you weren't using the entire 8 gig. It was only using a small portion of it. So by doing this, we're expanding the file system to use the entire 8 gig of the micro SD card. Now we're gonna go back to the first screen here. Under network options, this is number 2, network options, hit enter. Or it says host name, hit enter again. By default, again, the name is gonna be Raspberry Pi. That's the network name or the host name. So we're gonna change it here. We're gonna change it to capital P, lowercase I, 01. This is gonna be Pi 01, our first Pi, our master Pi. So then we're gonna hit OK. So now we changed our Pi name. So now we're gonna hit tab. It's gonna bring us down to here. Then we're gonna make sure we highlight finished, hit enter. And that's basically it. It kicked us out of Putty right here because we changed some stuff around and then it rebooted. So we're gonna close this. So we're gonna open up Putty again. We're gonna type in our IP address. So mine is 192.168.1.17. Yours will be different. Hit enter. Type in the username, which is Pi. Then password is Raspberry. All right, now as you can see, we've finished this part here where it says installing Raspberry. We're finished with that. Now we're gonna move on to this portion where it says installing MPICH. So all we really have to do is just copy these lines of code here. So I'm gonna copy it, including the sudo, paste it onto the terminal here, hit enter. And give it a couple of minutes to run. Now that that's finished, we're gonna copy the second line here, sudo make directory MPICH2. So basically what this is doing is it's making a directory called MPICH2. Hit enter. All right, so it finished making that directory. Basically, what sudo is a Linux command that gives you higher privileges, like the highest privileges you could possibly have. So if you don't type in sudo, for some commands, it might not work. So that's why I type sudo for everything, so just make it easier for everybody. So now we're gonna move into that directory. So we're gonna copy this third line of code here. Copy it where it says CD. So we're gonna paste it onto our terminal. So what's CD? CD is change directory. We're moving into the directory we just created here, MPICH2. So once we hit enter, we're gonna be in that directory. As you can see here now, we're in that directory. Now we're gonna copy this line of code here. We're gonna download something, and we're gonna download MPICH version 3.2. So paste that there, hit enter. It should take a couple minutes to download. All right, so that's finished downloading. We're gonna copy this other line of code right under it, which is going to extract the file we just downloaded. All right, so that's done. We're going to create, or we're gonna copy this line of code here. This is going to create a directory in the home directory called RPI MPI. So we're gonna hit enter. That's done. We're gonna copy this next line of code here. We're gonna make another directory inside the directory we just created called MPI-install. So copy that, paste it there, hit enter. And we're gonna make another directory. And I forgot to type in sudo, so I'll fix it. So before you paste this next one, type in sudo here, hit space, then paste this one here. Basically, it's making another directory called MPI build inside the Pi directory. Hit enter. So now we're going to copy this line of code here. We're going to install something called G4tran. So copy this line of code, paste it, sudo apt-get install. So apt-get install is the Linux version of getting stuff, like downloading something and installing it. So what we're installing is called G4tran. So we're gonna hit enter, give it a couple of minutes to install. If it asks you to continue, just type Y, then hit enter again. All right, now that that's done, we're gonna copy the next line of code underneath it here, paste it, hit enter. This one might take like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So if it takes a really long time, don't be scared, that's normal. All right, so that's done now. We're gonna copy this next line of code, sudo make, copy it, paste it here. And basically this one's gonna take the longest because we're making everything we just installed here. So sudo make, hit enter. All right, so that's finished. Now the next step, I'm gonna copy this line of code here. Copy that, sudo make install. So paste it here. The first one was very long. Now this one is also going to be long. So just hit enter and I'll be back once it's finished. Now that that's done, we're going to copy this line of code here, which is allowing us to move to the last directory we're in, or the main directory. Now copy this line of code here, nano bash rc, paste it. This should open up a text editor, which it does. Now we're going to copy this here where it says path equals all the way up to right here where it ends with bin. Copy that. All right, so we're going to click on the terminal. We're going to hit the down arrow. We want to go all the way to the end. All right, this is a document, so we're going to go all the way to the end. Right about there, we're going to paste what we just copied, right? So now we're going to copy this instruction here. We're going to hold control, all right? Hold the control, press 6 and X together. 6X together. So on the terminal, we're going to hold control, press 6X together, then Y for yes, and enter. All right, so that's it. We just edited that file and add this line of code at the bottom of it. So now we're going to reboot. So we're going to copy this here, sudo reboot, which will reboot the Raspberry Pi. Once we reboot the Raspberry Pi, we're going to lose the network connection with PuTTY. So we're going to close this up here. We're going to open up PuTTY again. We're going to give the Raspberry Pi about like 10 or 15 seconds to reboot. Because if it's still rebooting, this won't work. So we got to give it a couple of seconds to finish rebooting. While it's rebooting, we're going to type in our IP address. So our Raspberry Pi, mine is 192.168.1.17. Type in yours. Now click open. We're going to move this up over here so you can see it better. And once it's finished rebooting, it should load up with the username prompt. Now we're going to type in the username, which is Pi, P-I, hit enter. Then the password is Raspberry, R-A-S-P-B-E-R-R-Y. Hit enter. Now we're logged in. So now all we have to do is copy this line of code. All right, so copy this line of code here. And if we get our host name, that means whatever we did up to this point it's working. So copy it, paste it, hit enter, and we got our host name back. We changed it to Pi01. That means whatever we did works. So that's how we were able to test it out. We're almost done with this video. We still got to do this part here. We're installing MPI for Pi. MPI is the software that's going to allow us to cluster our Raspberry Pis. It's basically one of the more popular ways to create a cluster using computers. So MPI for Pi is the Pi version of that. So we're going to install MPI for Pi. So now we're going to scroll down. We're going to copy the first line of code here. It's going to install MPI for Pi version 2.0. Paste it there, hit enter. Okay, now that's finished. We're going to copy the second line of code. The second line of code, it's basically extracting the file we just downloaded. So it's sudo tar. Tar is basically just extracting. And these are permissions. These are the type of things where we want it to do. ZXF and the file name .gz. .gz is the like a RAR file, but it's used for Linux. If you're used to like .rar or .zip, .gz is like the Linux version of it. So we're gonna paste it here. Once we hit enter, it's gonna extract that file. Now we're gonna move to our new directory here. Copy that, paste it here. CD to MPI for Pi -2.0. Hit enter. We're in that directory now, as you can see down here. I'm gonna copy this line of code here where it says sudo aptitude install python.dev. So we're installing python.dev. So copy that, hit enter. Oops, what we're gonna do is type in sudo apt hyphen get, hit space, install python hyphen dev. Hit enter. Now it's gonna download Python and install it. Type in y, hit enter. I have to update this line of code here. Alright, so that's done. Now we're going to copy this next line of code. Python set up the Pi build. Copy that, paste it here, hit enter. Alright, so that's done. Now we're going to copy the next line of code. Sudo python setup install. Oops. That's done. We're going to copy this line of code here. We're almost done, guys. We got a couple more lines of code for this video. So copy that, paste it, hit enter. Now finally, this is the final line of code for this video. So copy it, paste it. Before you hit enter, I'm going to explain to you what's going to happen. So what this is going to do is going to test out MPI, and it's going to print out our name plus hello world 5 times. If we see that, that means whatever we did up until now worked. We installed everything successfully, including MPI for Pi. So now we're going to hit enter. And as you can see, it says hello world, and it shows you the process, and then it shows our name 5 times. So our name is Pi01. That means everything we did up until this point was successful. So if you get up to this point and you're getting an error, you're going to try to start from the beginning. You might have missed one line of code here. And that's pretty much it for this video. In part 3, the next video, where we're going to finish the cluster. Everything should be ready to go. In part 4, we're going to do the benchmarks. We're going to run a bunch of different scripts to test out the power of our Raspberry Pi cluster, compare it to a regular Raspberry Pi without a cluster, comparing it to other computers to see how much performance we get out of a cluster computer. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. I'm Rustin from RaspberryTech.com, and thank you guys for watching. What's up guys, I'm Rustin from RaspberryTech.com. How you guys doing? I'm doing well. Hopefully you guys are doing well today too. Now this is video 3 of our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster supercomputer video series. In this video we're going to finish up the cluster. We're going to set up the rest of the Raspberry Pis, and the cluster will be completed. In video 4, or part 4, we're actually going to test out the Raspberry Pi 4 cluster. We're going to run some benchmarks. We're going to run some Python scripts to see how powerful the Raspberry Pi supercomputer cluster really is. Without further ado, let's get started with this video. Now the first thing we're going to need to do is open up a URL. I'm using Chrome, and navigate to this URL right here. This is a page I created. This is the Raspberry Pi 4 cluster, a page that I created on my Dev Unicorn website. Link will be in the description. We're using this page to finish our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster as all the steps, and we're going to copy the code from this page here. And once we navigate to that, just minimize it. Now what we're going to need to do is burn Raspbian and all the other Raspberry Pis. Instead of redoing what we did in the last video to all the other Pis, what I'm going to do is copy the image from our Pi 1 and burn it onto the other Raspberry Pi, so we don't have to repeat video part 2 with all the other Raspberry Pi. So we just have to copy it and burn it onto their SD cards. It's pretty simple. Now to get this to work, disconnect the micro SD card from your Raspberry Pi, the one we were working on in the last video. Connect it to your computer. So the first we're going to need to do is open up Win32 Disk Imager, and we're going to navigate to the folder where we want to save our image file. I'm going to go to my backup drive here, and I'll just save it in the directory of the backup drive. Now I'm going to call mine Raspberry Pi 4 cluster, and just hit open. Now we're going to hit read. Now what's going to happen is it's going to read our micro SD card and burn it into an image onto our computer. So we're going to take that image and we're going to write it to the rest of the micro SD cards of our Raspberry Pi cluster, so we don't have to repeat video 2 on the other Raspberry Pis. So once this is finished, I'll be right back. All right, now that's finished. We're going to click on OK. Now we're going to close this. So now we have an image burnt onto our computer. Now all we have to do is we're going to do this for all our Raspberry Pis and all their micro SD cards. You have to open up Win32 disk imager, right? You're gonna click on this folder icon. You're going to look for wherever you saved that image file. I saved mine in backup here. And whenever you're looking for your image file, you have to make sure you have to click on this box here and this option here with the dot. Look for that file. This is the one I created, Raspberry Pi 4 cluster. Click open. Then make sure that your micro SD card is connected to your drive. Now you want to connect the second micro SD card. You want to take out the one we just made an image of, put it back into your Raspberry Pi 1, take out Raspberry Pi 2's micro SD card, plug it in. Then all you have to do is click on write. You're gonna do this for all the micro SD cards. So whenever you finish burning them, plug them back into the Raspberry Pi. Once you finish that, now we can move on to this next step. And this next step is to turn on the Raspberry Pi. Make sure all your SD cards are connected to all your Raspberry Pis. Make sure they're connected to your network, the same network where you have internet. So once that's done, we can move on to the next step. Hey, so now what we need to do is open up PuTTY. We're gonna open up our web browser, and I'm just going to move this here, expand this a little bit so that we have both of these windows open at the same time here. So we left off right here where we were supposed to install Nmap. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to log into my Raspberry Pi. Log into your Raspberry Pi 1, the same Raspberry Pi you logged into video 2. So mine says 192.168.1.17. Yours is going to be different. I'm going to move this over here so you guys can see better. And login is Pi. And the password is Raspberry. Raspberry. All right, so we're logged into our Pi 1 right now. So now, again, we left off right here, installing Nmap. So we're going to copy this line of code here, sudo apt-get update. It's going to update the Raspberry Pi, basically. And give it about a minute to finish. We're going to copy this line of code here, but right here I made a mistake. See right here, this is a capital S. It's not supposed to be a capital S. So just type in sudo in the command line, sudo, hit space, then copy it from here, apt-get install nmap. It's basically installing nmap. And paste it here, hit enter. What nmap is, it allows us to like scan the IP address so we could get the IP addresses of all our Raspberry Pis and the current IP address of our current Raspberry Pi. So it's going to ask you, do you want to continue? Type in Y, hit enter. All right, so that's done. Now we're going to copy this line of code. It's if config, paste it. It's going to show us the IP address of our current Raspberry Pi, the one we're logged into now, which is Raspberry Pi number 1. Hit enter, and we're going to scroll all the way up. And as you can see, this is our Raspberry Pi IP address, 192.168.1.117. Yours is going to be different. So now we want to use the next line of code here, which is going to scan the entire network, and it's going to give us the IP addresses of all our Raspberry Pi. So we're going to copy this, paste this here, hit enter. And what we're going to do is, once that's finished scanning, we're going to copy the IP addresses of our Raspberry Pis. So, all right, so these are the IP addresses for my Raspberry Pis here. Yours is going to be different. We know that these are the IP addresses for the Raspberry Pis because they all have the same name. We haven't changed the name because we copied the SD card from part 2. So they're all named Pi 1. We're going to change the names in this video, but as you can see, Pi 1 IP address is 192.168.1.14. The next one is 192.168.1.18. Then we have 192.168.1.19. Then the final one is the one we're working with right now. It's 192.168.1.17. Copy these down on a piece of paper. I'm going to do that as well. So what I'm going to do with mine, because I like to have mine in number order. The 1.4, this one right here, I'm going to keep it Raspberry Pi number 1. The next one, .17, I'm going to make it a Raspberry Pi number 2. And this one here, .8, I'm going to make it Raspberry Pi number 3. And the final one, .9, I'm going to make it Raspberry Pi .4. So we're going to do that right now. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, because Pi number 1, my Pi number 1 is going to be .14. It's already Pi number 1. I have to change the host name of the Pi that we're in right now, but I'm going to wait to change that to last. So I'm in .17 and I want .17 as Pi number 2. So I have to wait till the end to do that. So we're gonna we're gonna SSH into Pi number 3. To do that, copy this right here, SSH, and this IP address there, dot paste. And we're just gonna change the ending here to my Pi 3's IP address. My Pi 3 IP address is .18. So I'm gonna hit enter. I'm gonna type in yes, hit enter. Then the password is Raspberry. And we're logged into our Pi number 3, or my Pi number 3. Yours is gonna be different. So let's change the host name. It's pretty simple. Just copy this line of code here. Sudo raspi config. This will bring up the configuration page. Paste it, hit enter. All right, so it's pretty simple. We're gonna scroll to networking, hit enter, and click on where it says hostname. Click OK. Now, by default, it's Pi 1 because we copied the image from Pi 1. So we're going to change this to Pi number 3. Just delete the 1 and put a 3. I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to press OK. And we're going to hit tab. Click on finished. Type in yes. It's going to reboot the Pi. And we're going to lose connection to our Pi number 3. Now we're back to Pi number .17, which I want to be Pi number 2. So right now we're going to SSH into Pi number 4 so we can change the host name of Pi number 4. So to do that, again, we're going to copy this line of code here, SSH, and then the IP address here. It's SSH Pi at, then the IP address. So I'm going to change mine to a .19. All right, hit enter, type in yes. I'm going to hit enter, password's Raspberry. Now I'm logged into Pi number 4. Again, we have to change the host name. To change the host name, again, copy this line of code here, sudo raspi config. Copy it, paste it, hit enter. Now we're going to scroll down to option number 2, which is networking, hit OK. Under N1, which is host name, hit enter, hit OK again. Now we're going to change this to Pi number 4, right? So we're going to hit the tab button, hit enter. Now we're going to hit the tab button again. Move over to finished, then hit enter. Then click on yes. Now we logged out from Pi number 4. So now I'm going to show you that Pi number 1, which is .14, is actually Pi number 1 because we copied the image from the image of the original one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the SSH here. Right? Now I'm going to change this to .14, which is Pi number 1 for me. Hit enter. Password is Raspberry. Hit enter. And copy this code here. Sudo raspi config to open up the configuration page. Paste it. Hit enter. Scroll down to networking options. Host name. OK. As you can see, it's already Pi number 1 because we copied the image from last videos. So I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit tab again. Move over to finish, hit OK, click on yes. We logged out of Pi number 1, which is 14. So now the final step is to actually change the IP address of the Pi we're actually in right now, which was Pi 1, now it's going to be Pi 2. So to do that, I don't have to SSH into anything because we're already logged inside of Pi. So I'm just going to do is copy sudo raspi config, copy it, paste it, hit enter. Scroll down to network options and click in host name. Okay, right now it's Pi 1. We're going to change it to Pi number 2. So hit tab, hit OK, hit tab again, move over to finished, hit enter, yes for reboot. So now we lost connection to our Raspberry Pi. We got to close PuTTY. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start from Raspberry Pi 1. So we're going to start logging into Raspberry Pi 1, then SSH into the other ones. So I'm going to open up PuTTY, and my Raspberry Pi 1 is 192.168.1.14. Remember, your guys' number is not going to be the same as mine. So whenever I say Pi 1, log into yours. So mine says .14. I'm going to hit open. I'm going to type in yes here, or click yes. Then the login is Pi, and the password is Raspberry. All right, so we logged into our Pi number 1. All right, so now we're finished with this part here. We have to do this part here where it says edit machine file. We're going to copy this line of code here where it says nano machine file. So copy this line of code, nano machine file, paste it, hit enter. So all we have to do is add I'm gonna type it into here. So press I to edit, right? Now we're gonna type in our IP addresses. So now we're gonna type in the IP addresses of our Raspberry Pis. We're gonna start with Pi 1. My Pi 1 is 192.168.1.14. Then we're going to hit enter. Then we're gonna type in our IP address of our Pi number 2. Mine is 192.168.1.17. Now I'm gonna hit enter, go to the next line. Then I'm gonna type in 192.168.1.18 is my number 3. I'm gonna hit enter, then 192.168.1.19 is my Pi number 4. So I'm gonna hit enter there. Now to save this, all we have to do is hold Control on your keyboard. Hold Control, press 6, X, Y, then type in yes to save. Y for save, then hit enter. Now we saved our file, and we can check to see if it's saved. We're gonna type in nano and the machine file again. As you can see, these files are saved in there. All right, so we edited our machine file with the IP addresses of our Raspberry Pis in Raspberry Pi order, with the first one being Pi 1, the second one being Pi 2, the third one being Pi 3, and the fourth one being Pi 4. So now we're moving on to the next step here. We're gonna copy this line of code here, and we're gonna paste it here. And we're gonna hit enter. And if we see Pi 1, that means whatever we did up until now works. So now we're gonna try to copy this line of code and paste it. So if we try to copy this line of code and paste it, what's gonna happen is we're gonna see Pi 1, right? Because we're logged into Pi 1, but we're getting errors for the rest of the Raspberry Pis. What we should have saw is all the Pi names here, Pi 1, 2, 3, and 4. But to get that to work, we have to scroll down to here, and let's just escape this here, or I'm gonna press Control C, all right, and I'm gonna type in clear to get rid of all that text right there. Clear just gets rid of this, clears the screen out basically. All right guys, so now we're gonna start this next step here. We're gonna copy this line of code, SSH keygen, paste it. You're gonna hit enter a few times, all right? I'm gonna type in yes because I already did this the first time, but all you have to do is type in enter until you see this thing here, this like graphics. So now we're gonna copy this next line of code. I'm gonna copy this next line of code here, hit enter. Then we're gonna copy this next line of code here, and hit enter. So now we're gonna scroll down, we're gonna do the same thing with Pi 2. So we're gonna SSH into Pi number 2, copy that, paste it. My Pi 2 IP address is .17. So delete this, change this to .17. Yours is gonna be different. Hit enter. Password's Raspberry. Password's Raspberry. We're logged into our Pi number 2. Now all we have to do is copy this line of code here. We're gonna do the same thing we did with Pi number 1. Paste this here. Hit enter a few times. I'm gonna have to type in yes because I did this before. You're just gonna type in enter a couple of times till you see this here. I'm gonna copy this next line of code here. Hit paste. We're gonna hit enter. Copy this next line of code here. Paste. Hit enter. Now we're gonna copy this line of code here. Change this IP address here to this to our Pi 1. My Pi 1 is .14. Then we're gonna hit enter. Password's Raspberry, R-S-P-B-E-R-R-Y. We're gonna hit enter. All right, so I'm gonna copy the next line of code here, paste it, hit enter. And then we're gonna type in exit, E-X-I-T, which is going to exit the SSH session, which would bring us back to Pi number 1. So now we're gonna start with Pi number 3, SSH into Pi number 3, type in the IP address of your Raspberry Pi number 3. Mine here is .18. I'm gonna hit enter, type in yes, hit enter, password's Raspberry. All right, so I'm logged into Pi number 3. We're gonna copy this here, SSH keygen, paste it. You're gonna hit enter a few times. I'm gonna have to type in yes because I've done this before, but you're just gonna type in enter a few times till you see this image here. Now we're gonna copy this next line of code here, paste it, hit enter. Copy this next line of code here, paste it, hit enter. Copy this line of code here, including the space and the dot here. Hit enter. We're gonna change this to Pi number 1's IP address right here. Mine is .14, so I'm just gonna add the 4. We're gonna hit enter. I didn't copy the whole thing, so I'm gonna do it again. Copy, paste here, change my IP address to Pi number 3's. My Pi number 3's IP, or Pi number 1's, I'm sorry, my Pi number 1's IP address is .14. So we're gonna hit enter. So we're gonna change the IP address of our Pi number 1. Mine is .14. So we're gonna hit enter. All right, guys, so we're gonna copy this line of code here. SSH keygen. Copy it, paste it here, hit enter. And enter a few times so you see the code. I'm gonna type in yes for mine because I already did mine. You're gonna keep hitting enter till you see this graphic here. I'm gonna copy this line of code here, paste it, hit enter. I'm gonna copy this line of code here. Hit paste, hit enter. Copy this line of code right here. Hit paste. I'm gonna change this to Pi number 1's IP address, which is .14 for me. Yours is gonna be something different. Make sure you add a dot space, hit enter. Password's Raspberry. Hit enter. That's done. Now we're going to copy this next line of code here. Paste it, hit enter. Then we're gonna type in exit, E-X-I-T, hit enter. Now we're exited from Pi number 3. We're going to SSH into Pi number 4. Copy this line of code here, SSH at Pi, or SSH Pi at the IP address. My IP address of Pi number 4 is .19. So I'm gonna delete that, add a .19, hit enter, type in yes. And the password should be Raspberry, hit enter. Now we're logged into our Pi number 4. We're gonna do the same thing we did with the other Raspberry Pis. We're gonna copy this code here, paste it, hit enter, keep hitting enter. I'm gonna type in yes because I've already done this before. You're just gonna keep hitting enter. So you see this graphic here. And I'm gonna copy this line of code here, hit enter. We're going to copy this line of code here, paste it here, hit enter. Now we're gonna copy this line of code here, including the space and the dot. Make sure you add the space in the dot right there, else it won't work. We're gonna change this to our Pi number 1's IP address. Our Pi number 1's IP address is .14. Mine is .14, yours is gonna be different, so I'm just gonna add a 14 there. Hit enter, password is Raspberry. Hit enter. We finish with that. We're gonna copy this line of code here. Hit paste, we're gonna hit enter. We're gonna exit, E-X-I-T. So we're exiting Pi 4, we're back in Pi number 1 now. So now we're almost done. We have a few more commands to do. So this here, we're gonna do this to all Pis. So we're gonna copy this line of code here, paste it here. We're gonna change this to our Pi number 2's IP address. My Pi number 2's IP address is .17. So delete that, I'm gonna add a 17. I'm gonna hit enter. I'm gonna type in yes. I'm gonna hit enter again, the password's Raspberry. All right, so now we're gonna copy this line of code. Paste it here, hit enter. Now, we're going to copy this line of code here. Make sure we change this IP address to our Pi number 3's IP address. My Pi number 3 is .18, yours is gonna be different. I'm gonna hit an enter. Password's Raspberry, hit enter. Now we're gonna copy this line of code here. Paste it, hit enter. Now, we're almost there. I'm gonna copy this line of code here, including the space and the dot. I'm gonna change it to our Pi number 4's address. My Pi number 4's address is .19. So delete that, add a 19, we're gonna hit enter. Our password is Raspberry, hit enter. Now we're gonna copy this here. And this is the last line of code to actually configure a Raspberry Pi cluster. So hit enter, now we're done with that. All right, so now all we have to do is just copy this line of code here. We're gonna copy this line of code here, paste it, hit enter. Now we're going to copy this line of code here and hit enter. If we hit enter and we get the host names of all our Raspberry Pis, everything worked. So we hit enter. I got back the host name of all the Raspberry Pis. That means everything we did worked. Our cluster is configured. All the nodes are talking to each other. We have a master node. Everything is working fine. Now, if you don't see this, if you're getting an error, just go back from start from here again. Log back into Raspberry Pi number 1 and redo this whole part. Also check your nano file. Make sure your nano file, the IP address of all your Raspberry Pis are correct. Before I made this video, I made a error. I added a 2 instead of a 1 here in my nano file, and it took me forever to figure that out. But always check your nano file first. Make sure that the IP addresses of your nano file, everything is correct. Start from the beginning, like 192.168.1, and then whatever IP address your number ends with. Then do the same thing with the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one. Make sure it's exactly the same. Then save the nano file again. Then go start from this step again. Log into your Raspberry Pi number 1, wherever you putty into your Raspberry Pi number 1, basically. Then start from here. Then work your way all the way to here again. Then that should fix your problem. And yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. We're pretty much finished with our Raspberry Pi cluster. Now in video part 4, we're actually going to test out our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster supercomputer performance to see if it actually does improve our performance. We're going to run some benchmarks. We're going to run some Python scripts. We're going to do a bunch of cool stuff. So stay tuned for that video. If you guys like this video, please give me a like. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I am Rasim from RaspberryTech.com, and thank you guys for watching.